It's time to take a TO. You're listening to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner and your host, Kurt Cross. Each episode, we take you inside the DMV sports scene and beyond. Sponsorship and advertising opportunities are available. And now, welcome to this week's episode. It's time to take a TO. Here's your host, Kurt Cross, with Coach Steve Turner.
Coach, he introduced us, so we got to do it, right?
No doubt. That was really good.
Welcome to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner. I am your host, Kurt Cross, and the gentleman sitting across from me is none other than Coach Steve Turner. We welcome you in to our studio, legacy listeners and our new listeners, to episode 3. You can listen to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio. Don't forget Buzzsprout and more than 15 podcast platforms. Basically, anywhere you listen, we will be there. Please spread the word, and we are going to keep this podcast rolling. We like to invite sponsorships and advertising, so if you want to get your brand out to our airwaves, to our listeners, just reach out to Coach Turner or myself, and we can open that discussion. Once again, welcome to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner. Coach Turner is a friend, husband, and a father. He brings his energy, knowledge of life, education, and coaching to the studio each week. As the head coach of the Gonzaga College High School Purple Eagles basketball program, Coach Turner is also a mentor and a coach with USA Basketball, having earned gold more than once, earning the Gatorade National Coach of the Year, and of course, he led the Nike Hoops Summit team in Portland this past summer. Coach, I need a drink after saying all that. Now that we got all the formalities out of the way, they're in our rearview mirror. How was your week, sir?
It was great until this weekend and this morning. I want to say prayers up to a couple families. The Bozeman family, unfortunate. Their son was shot and killed this weekend. And then to the McLaughlin family of Gonzaga, John McLaughlin, who started the Gonzaga DC Classic and has been the man behind its mission, its purpose for a number of years. We lost him this morning. So my prayers are up to two families that I love and cherish and care about. And I know they're going through some tough times at the moment, but I want them to know that they got a family in DMV that's got their back, and we're going to be here to support them.
Isn't that something that sports always does? And because I'm not as connected with field hockey or lacrosse or football, I'm more connected with basketball. Doesn't the basketball family always extend its arms to those in need?
No doubt. I mean, I think it goes a long way in this area. And I can tell you when we get affected,
right?
I continue to see those arms put around us, and we're certainly here to support each other.
Absolutely. And I feel like when I saw the story about Bozeman, I came across his father a time or two. I must have, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think I did. So prayers up, as Coach Turner says, because you know what? We like to have fun here. We like to chop it up, but, life is life. I mean, we can turn the microphones off. Life is still life, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Coach Turner. I did a wedding yesterday. Carlos, one of our DJs, his brother Marco, got married. Wonderful wedding this past weekend. We're under 30 days until the NBA season tips off. So I'm in my happy place.
Yeah, I know
I'm in my happy place.
When's the first? When you doing your first fantasy?
You know what? We're already doing football, but we're going to have our fantasy basketball draft in about 2 weeks so we can get ready to do what we do. I'm the reigning champ on the NBA fantasy side with my family. So, Paula won the WNBA and Chelsea won fantasy football last year. Right now, I'm 0-3 in fantasy football. I can't talk no junk. I can't do any of that. But what I can do is I can talk about Soko Butcher. I can do that.
So, all right.
Let's talk about the cheesesteak. I'll go back again. That's number one.
Okay.
Let's make sure we do that. What you failed to tell me is that I'm going to have a cheesesteak for that day and the next day. Because it's a big sucker.
Oh, it's a big sucker.
It's like I just finished the rest of it the other day. My mom had it for 2 more meals after that. I took my mom. I said, look, Mom, I got a recommendation. Let's go down to Tacoma Park. Let's check it out. And for those who don't know, Soko Butcher on 7306 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park, Maryland. They make a great cheesesteak. Steve Turner said it's the best one in the DMV. I don't agree. I think it's great. I think it's great. I have a spot that I go to that I love a little bit better, but I will go back there again. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you get the cheesesteak, either go super hungry or know that you're going to have 2 meals. It's overstuffed. It is the sloppiest cheesesteak you ever going to have.
Oh, for real.
But, man, and they got some good meat in that butcher counter, too.
Yes, they do.
They got some good meat. So thank you for that recommendation. And we, of course, will give a shout-out to Soko Butcher in Tacoma Park, Maryland. All right? That was your local recommendation of the week.
Yes, sir. I didn't steer you wrong.
No, you didn't steer me wrong. So let's talk a little bit before we get into the starting five, a little commercial break and all that stuff. What happened yesterday at FedEx Field, brother?
We've made a change for the top.
Right.
But we still have some major deficiencies.
Okay.
And as I said, it was beautiful to be able to start off the season the way we did.
Right.
But this is not a team that's Super Bowl bound by any means.
Right.
And we still got our work cut out to get this team to where we want it to be. But I like the changes we made because it feels good about being a part of a great organization again.
For some reason, and Josh Allen ate that ass up. He took care of business.
Well, he's coming off of
a couple of games,
couple tough games. So
right.
He was due to have his day, and unfortunately, we had to pay for it.
We sure did. I thought they were going to go Jacoby Brissett. 4 picks or 3 picks, by I can't say his name right now. Why are we can't both blank at the same time. We can't blank at the same time. The quarterback for the Skins, I'm sorry, I can't say his name.
You even called him the Skins.
I'm all messed up. But after 3 interceptions, I thought they'd make a change. I'm glad they did.
They talked about it during the telecast.
Okay, so I was in the car at the time.
It's he's our guy right now.
Right.
He's the guy, and we got to be able to make sure that we can stand behind him. And
Howell,
right? And our quarterback has got to be able to continue to own the locker room. This is one loss,
right?
If we on a downward spiral,
right,
which could happen this year,
right?
Maybe there is a change late in the game, but I think for this being the first loss, their mindset was we can't lose him,
right?
Because we got to be able to figure out how to get back on winning ground heading into next week.
At least we're not the Denver Broncos. They had a 70-piece dropped on their dome, as my man from Denver said. They got 70 dropped on them. 70, Steve.
I think Dolphins set a record.
Yes.
Most points ever in a regular season game.
They came damn close to the overall record ever. 70? 70? How do you get 70 dropped on you? And you're supposed to be Mr. New Orleans Saints. I won me a Super Bowl. Pay me all this money. I'm going to bring something to Denver. What the hell did he bring to Denver? They got a 70.
I don't think he's the problem.
Shannon Sharp said a 50-piece plus 20 flats for free got dropped on their head yesterday.
I'm with him on that, but I don't think he's the problem.
Okay.
I unfortunately, because I like him a lot, I'm not sure Russell's the guy.
Did I curse the Broncos? I mean, last week I talked about how I didn't like them.
Yes, you did.
And next thing, my cousin Aaron, shout out to Aaron, he's a big Broncos fan. 70, Steve.
Yeah, that's not good.
In the NFL? Me and you can stay on the sidelines and we can get 70 dropped on us.
Man, look, you ain't dropping 70 on me without a fight.
It's hard pressed. Someone's hard pressed to drop 70 to you on the basketball court, let alone the gridiron, right?
Thank God.
All right. Coach Fromm and Colorado Buffaloes, they met up with the Oregon team who had their number. What happened there, Coach?
I think similar to the Skins.
Right. They're finding their way.
They're finding their way. They won some great games early. They met up with a team that was more athletic,
right,
deeper in different positions. I think Colorado got exposed for where they aren't yet in terms of their lines.
The offensive lines.
And I didn't think it was going to be that bad.
Right.
But I thought this was the one.
Right.
I thought this would be the game that they would go down.
And they got USC next week.
They do. I think their chances could be, I hate saying this because that's my quarterback.
Our boys out there.
But their defense isn't great.
Right.
So this could be a sling 'em up type game, like who outscores who.
Right.
I always felt like when I looked at the schedule and people started talking about these two games for Colorado, I said if they're going to get the one, it could be stealing one from USC versus being able to beat Oregon. I didn't think they'd be able to beat Oregon.
Right. Oregon's been up there for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll be right back with our starting five.
You're listening to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner and your host, Kirk Cross. And now, back to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner and your host, Kurt Cross.
The starting five. Welcome back to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner. I am your host, Kurt Cross. Let's talk about this starting five here. What happens here each week is that I'm going to ask Coach Turner a series of 5 questions he's never heard before. Coach, have you heard these questions, seen these questions written on my paper that you cannot see right now?
I have not.
All right. He gets 30 seconds to answer each question. If he does not answer the question in 30 seconds or less, that is what you will hear. Coach, we're going to talk about some basketball.
Okay.
Do you know anything about that, the round ball?
A little something.
28.5 for the ladies, 29.5 for the men?
Yes, sir.
All right. What do y'all use down there? Y'all use the Rock?
Nah, we Nike.
Oh, you Nike. I'm sorry. I've always been about the Evolution, the Wilson Evolution. Like that.
It's a good ball.
It's a good ball, but it's not the Nike ball.
But we're Nike. We're Nike.
We're Nike all the way. All right. Question number 1. John Morant with his off-the-court mess or Zion Williamson with his injury history? Who are you taking?
Ja Morant.
You going to take his mess and all? Zion can't stay healthy.
Right now, Zion can't stay healthy. If that's a tough question, to be honest with you. But, I think the return on investment right now is a guy that can be on the court.
Okay. All right.
So I have to go with it for that. Now, do I agree with the stuff off the court? Heck no.
Heck no.
I think he's going to mess up his money on the court if he keeps getting involved in some of these stupid things that he's done.
Right.
But I just don't know if Zion's ever going to get healthy. I'm praying that he does. Right. He's been one of my favorites.
We all want to see it, right?
I was blessed to be able to coach him at the NBA Players Camp when he was in high school. So I'm rooting for him all the way. And I think if he can get back, and he can help that group. They got a good young group that could propel them to do some different things. But if he can't get healthy, I don't know what those guys do with him.
What is USA basketball missing that hurt our FIBA play on the national team?
Well, the difference is that's not our A team.
Right.
And everyone else's A team are now filled with guys who get it done in the NBA.
Right.
You're not just, there's no fear factor anymore.
Okay.
There's too many guys internationally that play in the league and have a name. Let's look at what are we talking, the past definite 4 NBA MVPs are international.
Right.
So it lets you know that they're here to stay. They ain't afraid no more. And if we don't get to bring our best of the best, what Deion say? We coming, they coming.
Right. Okay.
And we're in a funky time right now too with USA basketball. As you look at the guys that we would say are our prime guys, they're starting to get on the end of their careers.
Right.
So we are going to need some of these young guys to step up, and I think spend more time with the camps in the off season. But I still like where we are, chance of,
getting gold next year in Paris.
Yes, I do believe that we can put the best team out there and have a chance to go get that done. But we got to realize, we're gonna need our NBA guys who have a chance to be a part of the USA basketball to get involved and be a part of this. And I think it's got to happen more than just waiting for the Olympics. We got to get them involved in these World Cups.
You said something that speaks to my next question. The guys we're used to seeing out there are getting to the end of their careers. Do the Warriors have the pieces, or have we seen the last of their best days?
I think they can still be there, but they got to stay healthy. If they can't stay healthy, then yeah, they're on their last leg.
What do the Washington Wizards need to do to make this town excited about basketball again?
They got to bring in some faces and some names that can mesh and gel and compete to be in the playoffs year in and year out. Doesn't mean we got to be all the way to the NBA finals or conference finals, but we got to have a team that can get in the playoffs and can win a series.
Could it have happened with Bradley Beal? That's the sixth question, actually.
It just depends on who else you were going to pull with him. He didn't have, in my opinion, the pieces around him to be able to be successful compared to the guys who are the top of the East.
Well, I mean, was there any money left, though, after he signed his contract?
Well, that's the other part. You got to find some guys who aren't just about their pocket.
Right.
And that are willing to maybe make some sacrifices to win first.
So that was like a sixth and seventh question, because the fifth question is this. Simply put, 3 words. Why the WCAC?
When you say that, what's the why?
Everyone, not everyone, but most of us consider WCAC the best conference in basketball. Quite possibly, you can make an argument for the best conference in football too.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why are we so rich with talent here?
Yeah. Why? I had to say that the parents birthing these kids have been, the DNA has been unbelievable in terms of creating unbelievable athletes.
Right.
But I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think WCAC is the best conference by far. And it's not just the best conference because of the sport. It's the best conference because of the education that these kids are receiving from the schools that are in the conference. I think it's a combination, isn't like what I like to say about Gonzaga. It's the best of the whole. And I think you have unbelievable coaches coaching at all the schools and in a lot of the sports. And in basketball, on both sides, men and women, the coaching from the team that's number one to the team that's the last place team is still pretty darn strong.
Best $5 you can spend?
Oh, for no doubt. I said for years, I think a guy like, Neil Berkman, who was over at Ireton, never got his just due or the credit he deserved. I always felt like Neil was a tough out every single night. I just don't think he ever had the talent that the other teams in our league had.
Right.
And I always said if he had some of the talent that teams that have been perennial top 4 teams, top 5 teams in the league had, Neil could have given all of us hell.
Right.
And so when you have a guy like that you can go to their house and on any given night, I don't care if you're the number 1 team, you gotta bring your A game coaching and your players gotta bring their A game playing, because a guy like that find a way to clip you off. I found out in one of my best years, 18-0 regular season, which I think is harder than winning. In my opinion, it's harder than winning our tournament.
Okay.
Which is 3 games, lightning in a bottle. If you got the team that can go get 3 in a row, you're the champion. But to go 18-0 in the WCAC, there's only been a few teams to ever do it. And in that year we went 18-0, I get clipped off by Neil in the quarterfinals.
Take that 18-1, huh?
And so you just never know on any given night. And I think what's so fun about our league and what makes it so good is iron sharpens iron. And we have a lot of very, very talented and good coaches on both the men and the women's side. And I'm speaking more to my sport, basketball, than anything. And that's why the WCAC.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is your starting 5. The starting 5. We're about to take a break. However, Coach, for 3 weeks now, I wanted to mention this to you, and I have not asked you. Paula told me 3 weeks ago to ask you about this and write it into my script. I did not. Alhambra, what happened?
I think it became more of a financial thing.
Okay.
And, also I know they wanted to rebrand it and revamp it.
Right.
It's been tough not having Philly be a part of that trio we had for so many years. And you started having to take too many teams from the WCAC, and it became like our playoffs all over again / season all over again.
Okay.
You're playing for us in St. John's, there were years we were playing each other
4
or 5 times when you got 2 league games, a potential game in the playoffs, the DC States, then Alhambra.
Right.
I mean, there was a year we played each other back-to-back nights. We won the WCAC and had to come back a night or two and play them right away in the DC States. And then you end up with Alhambra again, and you're almost going to play each other again. Thank God Alhambra was kind enough to rotate some games so we wouldn't have to do that. But that would have been 5 games in a year. That's tough.
Right.
And so some of that happening and the group that was running it, had some changes and different things going on. But fingers crossed, we hope to see it back. And I hope that this is just a little break.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back, and we're going to jump into some topics in just a moment.
You're listening to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner and your host, Kurt Cross.
Listen to us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Buzzsprout, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms. Tune in on your preferred podcast platform. Be sure to listen, subscribe, and spread the word.
And now, back to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner and your host, Kurt Cross.
Let's get into it, Coach. For the purposes of explaining to those who are not familiar, let's define some terms that we're going to be talking about in this next segment. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. We're going to talk about reclassing. We're going to talk about things that are right and things that are wrong with the high school game, moving into the college game. Maybe it steps and reaches back into the middle school game, and NIL and all that stuff. Coach, tell the folks, the listeners, what is reclassing if an athlete reclasses?
So if an athlete reclasses, it means he repeats a year. So let's say we have a 7th grader,
right,
who's graduated. He's met all requirements in being able to move on to be an 8th grader the following year, but he decides, the family and him decide, or her decide to reclass. Basically, he's repeating the year that he just did over.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why would someone want to do that?
Here's the funny thing. I'm going to give you history on it.
Please.
I'm going to give you a history lesson. Reclassing became a negative connotation in the world of basketball.
Okay.
But reclassing has happened for years,
right,
in the 2 games of lacrosse and hockey.
Okay.
Never, ever
spoken about, right?
Spoken about.
Okay.
When you start looking at the demographic of the sports, for whatever reason, basketball, it started taking on a negative connotation.
Right.
And so it's been looked at in basketball that people are taking advantage of trying to make sure that their kid has a better chance or a leg up on the rest of the crowd by doing an extra year, being older, being a little more physically mature, to try to be at the top of the food chain in the class that they reclassed to.
Right.
I had a situation with some young men who played for me, and they decided to do an article in the Washington Post about it.
Okay.
Lied to me, lied to the family in reference to what the article was going to be about. Now, these kids reclassed before they came to me.
Okay.
They did this in middle school. But man in the Post decided to, in my opinion, go after my kids.
Right.
And I had a real big problem with it. And I've never understood why so many people attack the basketball world about it, but they've never said anything about 2 other sports that have been doing it forever and still do it.
Right.
But you never see an article in the paper in reference to kids playing those sports reclassing.
Okay.
So again, reclassing, as it's defined, is a kid who graduates a class and redoes that class over.
Often driven for athletic reasons.
I think most people will say that there are other reasons, but most cases, let's keep it 100. It's athletic reasons.
All right. Talk to me about the transfer portal. Now we're moving up into the college ranks.
Yes.
But let's talk about the transfer portal and what that is.
The transfer portal is college athletics potential black hole, as I like to describe it.
All right.
Because I think if you're a kid who's going into that transfer portal, you better know where you're coming out on the other side before you go in.
Okay.
Because now we have kids who are deciding to, if you decide that you're at a university, for whatever reason unhappy, you have an opportunity to throw your name into the portal,
okay,
which would allow someone else to pick you up and bring you to their institution,
right,
if they think you have the abilities to help their team be successful.
Right.
It's now been a place where I think folks are taking advantage of when adversity hits, tough times hit. This is my way out.
They want to change the scenery because they don't like what the scenery was
where they are. And we know this in life. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Correct.
The problem with the transfer portal is if you go in and don't get picked up.
Did you say goodbye to what you used to have?
You said goodbye to what you used to have for them, probably. I've seen a couple pieces where a kid had gone back, but it's very rare.
If you jump ship, they're going to fill your spot, right?
Correct.
All right.
And then now you're sitting in the transfer portal with nowhere to go.
You don't have a bus transfer.
So again, as I give advice to the transfer portal, I would tell people, if you're going in, hopefully you have an idea where you're coming out before you go in.
Okay. Talk to folks about something that's come about in the last 2 or 3 years. Explain what the NIL is, or not the NIL, what NIL is.
Name, image, likeness. Opportunity for young men and women
who are not pros
to take advantage of their name, image, and likeness to potentially be rewarded monetarily or with product or
through advertising.
Yes. Yeah. So exchanging who you are to allow yourself to benefit from a company or a sole proprietor, product or brand to kind of help you get over the top while you're in college.
All right, let's go.
And it's something that is kids in high school are now eligible for it as well.
Okay. Today's podcast is going to focus on families in athletics, reclassing the transfer portal, and sought after NIL dollars. Coach Turner, talk to me. Let's start with your advice to families on the younger level, the elementary or middle school athlete playing a sport. You've seen it, Steve. How can we best support these young athletes, temper expectations from parents, and in the end, create the best overall experience for the young athlete?
Well, I think it starts with the families running their own race.
Okay.
I think too many times, as I watch in the world that I'm in at the high school level, you have kids mature and grow in their games at different times. And I'm a believer in that at some point, you're always going to be playing against somebody that's older than you and younger than you.
Okay.
So you go back to the reclass. I was never a big proponent of it. And I thought the only way you should really reclass to me was if your child was really, really young, really, really physically immature, or just mentally immature.
Late birthday, any of that stuff?
Late birthday. And maybe, more importantly, just deficient in terms of the classroom.
Okay.
Never about the sport.
Okay.
Because I felt sport-wise, they're going to always be playing against older and younger kids.
Right.
So I don't know that there's super advantage to
there's
gain.
benefits doing that,
to gain other than, the physical maturity piece. But if your kid is getting it done in the classroom, why slow and stunt his growth and having him do the same work over again for what I've never really truly ever seen become a super advantage for a kid to be a little older and bigger at the middle school level.
Because if you're a stud, right?
No doubt. The best of the best have always been the best of the best in the 7th and 8th grade, in my opinion. But those are sometimes the same kids who get passed when they get to high school.
Right.
So for me, it's like run your race, take your time, allow your kids' educational growth to be the leading growth. And It's what prep schools were made for. If you ever felt like your kid needed more time before going to college, take advantage of it on the end of high school, where he is now physically mature, older mature, probably going to a prep school if he graduated to high school on time to work on the sport.
Right.
So, and I don't knock anybody for doing it. I mean, it's to each his own, but I went the route with my own children that I didn't think we needed it.
Right.
I certainly could see maybe where it could have helped my kids, but they were both so strong in the classroom, it never ever made sense to me.
What about, when we're talking about reclassing and all of that, I failed to mention something. What are we talking in terms of parent behavior, coach behavior, opposing teams, parents, and fans, in terms of what you're seeing in the sport to begin with? I just jumped way into a different category, but...
Well, some of it all goes hand in hand.
Okay. Because
I think we've become this generation of folks that it's about my baby. Mm-hmm. And we want it so bad right now, we're starting to live vicariously through our own kids.
Right.
And again, not allowing their path to be their path. And what happens is you're seeing people in the stands talking bad about other people's children. You're seeing parents get into fights with other parents and referees over something that should be fun. And if you do it the right way, could potentially be a means to an end.
Right.
But, I think what gets missed by some of the parents is we coaches, we're evaluating them too.
Right. You said that years ago.
Like most of the time, I already know who I want to recruit because I know what their talent level is. Most of the time when I go to the gym to watch them, or what most people might perceive me watching them, I'm really watching parents' behavior and how this family fits into my program and my school.
Because you don't want to bring that nonsense into your school.
I don't want no headaches.
Right.
I don't want any headaches. And I want it to be the best family environment where all of our families are supporting the young men in our programs, not just their own.
Right. How much of this is the parent reaching too far or the coach reaching too far when you talk about reclassing?
Well, most reclassing decisions come from, and for me, is not usually from the high school coach.
Okay.
That's usually something that happens with maybe their AAU club coach in the family, or the families just in general, because they, becomes a little bit of copycat, seeing what maybe a kid that you admire ahead of you doing, and maybe I think this is now the best thing for my kid to do.
Okay.
So, at the end of the day, I don't put this on any coaches, because if it's my child, then me, the family, is making this decision. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're not in control of your own family, I don't know. I don't get involved in that. But at the end of the day, I would hope that you're in control of what's going on with your child versus just taking the suggestion of somebody else.
All right. Let's move to the transfer portal. Please explain player eligibility. Can I talk? Eligibility, injuries, redshirting, and how COVID adjusted all of the above. So when you step into NCAA Division I, what is your eligibility at that time? What's the rule?
It's usually, well, first of all scholarships, parents, hear this one.
Let me turn. Hold on.
Before we get into this.
Talk about it.
All scholarships are a 1-year renewal. We used to look at it as you've got 5 years to get 4.
Okay.
And that could mean you could go in your freshman year, your red shirt, now you got 4 years.
Right.
But read the lines. Don't just sign the paper before you sign the paper. Your child's scholarship is a 1-year renewal.
All right.
And
there's a clearinghouse involved. There's a whole thing.
There's a lot of stuff involved. But when they talk about the scholarship, everyone assumes that my child's got a 4-year scholarship.
Right.
Well, if your child's acting up, there's some stuff in that black and white that will allow the school to dismiss your child, and that scholarship ain't guaranteed for the next year. If he's walking around campus acting a fool, he's getting caught drinking and driving, he's smoking weed, whatever it is. That
has evolved over the years, because now it has to include social media and your footprint there, right? Your digital footprint, as well as how you act in what we see in the newspaper.
No doubt.
Right. Now, they can offer you a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
You're still in high school. You act up in high school, they can pull that scholarship, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
They can figure out how to get out of it.
It's not easy street. Once you get the scholarship, you don't just go party and act like you ain't got no sense.
You got to own it, and you got to represent that institution to the fullest. And that's, like you said, you brought in a good piece to it. Social media, making sure that people go and look in your Twitter and your Instagram, that you're doing things that represent the school and represent your family.
Well, Quentin Q told us about that.
Yeah.
There was a young lady that he wanted to recruit, and he stopped everything because this is a true story. And Paula tells this to her students as well, because she teaches the health class and digital media and all that. He saw a young lady at a party holding a bottle of something that she was too young to drink. Doesn't matter whether she drank it or not. Yep. I can't have this 18, 17-year-old holding a bottle of Tito's on TikTok.
Right.
I just can't do it.
Well, I mean, I won't divulge who it was, but I had a college coach tell me he was in a tough time deciding between two hires.
Yes.
An assistant coach said to him, well, hey, coach, let's check the social. The one coach who he probably thought he was going to hire on social, red cup in the hand. Now, doesn't mean he was drinking as we know the red cup,
the red solo cup means.
To be. But it did decide on the decision for that coach to hire who he ended up hiring.
The other guy instead of that guy.
Correct.
Right. And young people, I'm not in the game of coaching high school kids anymore. I'm not in the transfer portal. I'm not in college. But I'm going to tell you now, if you are a sixth grader, if you're a fourth grader listening to this podcast, whatever you do on social media now, the internet is forever. It is forever. So you might think that you put something on TikTok or Twitter or Snapchat or whatever now, and in 10 years when you're trying to go to college, it's not there. It's there. It's someone's job at Princeton or Clemson or the University of Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
To dig into that and say, well, let's take a look at this young man. Let's take a look at this young woman. What's their situation? And they see you out there with all kinds of signs on your hands and all kinds of garbage on your T-shirt, and you smoking this and you jacking that and all that kind of stuff. This is not what we want on our campus. Steve doesn't want it on his campus on our street. What do you think? A university with a $50 million endowment, they don't want it on their campus either.
No doubt.
So, you got to think about that. But so the scholarships are renewable, and you got to do the right thing to get it renewed.
You do.
And then you get 5 years to play for, right?
It's kind of tricky.
Bouncing around?
Well, not the bouncing around, but you have some kids right now this year in their 8th or 7th seasons in college sports. And some of that comes from opportunities to getting medical red shirts. Right. You've got the COVID year. The kids who are under the COVID will go through the class of 21, which are kids who are currently juniors.
Okay.
This will be the last class that gets that COVID year. Okay. So unfortunately, my son lost out on that opportunity. Right. It cut off before him.
Because he's 22.
22.
Right.
So 21 has an opportunity just with scholarship and the COVID to get 5.
Okay.
Some of those kids could get more if they were hurt, injured, and those medical red shirts passed through.
Okay. So we went through all of that with COVID. We have the medical red shirts and all of that. And then what did you see as a result? What ended up happening? Was it Grand Central Station?
Definitely Grand Central Station. But what I feared the most and where it starts affecting my game or the level of my game, got scared. I started feeling like the high school kids were becoming extinct.
Okay. And
it's due to the fact that if you're a college coach and you can go in this transfer portal and get older, and you can get a little more experience, especially in years where you're fighting for your contract,
right? Which
means your team needs to win.
You're almost there, right?
Yeah, and it's an easier route for those guys to, again, older, physically mature guys with experience underneath their belt versus going after immature, physically and even mentally high school kid who you're going to have to teach some things that these guys have already had experience with. And so it's affected the high school level kid. I mean, and you're starting to see the levels of certain kids drop. I mean, I have a kid a couple years ago who, in my opinion, was a no-brainer Division I basketball player. And and in all the other years I've ever coached, pre-pandemic, would have gone to Division I. And some of the kids now are going to have to accept the fact that the level that they may think they are may not come because of coaches chasing the transfer portal versus going after the high school kid. So you got to be mindful that your level sometimes not even going to be predicated on how good your talent is. It may be for what's only available to you.
Has the transfer portal cooled down at all?
I don't think the transfer portal's cooled down, but I think you'll see some effects of guys going back towards the high school kids once we get through the 21s and that extra COVID year.
All right.
Because those kids are able to take on and take advantage of that scholarship if, one, they haven't done anything to jeopardize their status on a campus. And so that doesn't open up as many scholarships and doors for some of the high school kids. So when we get through that in 2 years, I think you will see it, I won't say fizzle out, but mellow down.
Who did it provide opportunities for? Who benefited from that?
Oh,
in the right way.
Oh,
in the right way.
The guys who, you know, I feel bad for the low majors and even some of the mid majors because they're now getting plucked by the big boys.
Right.
So where we used to see guys would recruit JUCOs, now you're seeing the big boys recruit the low major ones and the mid majors. And those places are becoming now farm systems to a certain degree for the big boys. A kid could go and shoot it great from a high percentage, maybe only average 8 to 10 points.
Right.
And when the big boys see that to be a need, they're coming to pluck them.
Right. And when you got a bigger campus, bigger endowment, more opportunity for NIL deals.
Say that again.
More opportunity for
NIL deals.
We saw that locally, right?
Well, we see it with our kids. It has opened their eyes to opportunities to be able to have some things afforded to them that were never able to before. You know, you go back to O'Bannon, the UCLA. I mean, he fought for this.
I mean, GMO Christmas, Steve. How long ago was Ed O'Bannon? Ed, right?
Yep. You're talking. He was the one who came out and talked about, you know, one of my favorite games back then, college basketball on the EA Sports game. They're making money off of me, and they're using my figure, my body, my picture, and I'm getting nothing from this. And so now these kids see an opportunity to walk out of college, regardless of what it is. If they're going to go into the regular business world, they're going to continue to play with potential earnings in their pockets. Right. They're chasing a little bit. I just want to throw caution to all that if you're not in that 1%, let's be mindful and think a little more about chasing quick money versus the long money. That's where I worry about for our young men and women is that make sure you're making a decision that's a real business decision.
Right.
I'm not saying don't do it, and I'm not saying don't take advantage of your name and your life. It's out there. So hats off to anyone that can do it. But make sure you're looking at it as the whole, and don't forget about why you're there. A lot of you guys say you want to be pros, you want to take advantage of basketball to keep playing basketball further down the line. Make that be the number one thing, not the NIL.
Speaking of which, NIL, is it good or bad for the student athlete?
There's definitely pros and cons.
Okay.
I mean, I think they're deserving. They bring these kids bring millions of dollars to these institutions.
So that's my thing, though, Steve. I like to play by the rules because NIL was not a thing 10 years ago. I think a kid is wrong for making money while being an amateur. However, you and I both know that when you and I have never been to Coalfield House together or, have never been to Comcast Xfinity Center together. But when I go to the Xfinity Center, I'm not going to see whoever the president of the university is. Mm-hmm. I'm going to see Brianna Jones. I'm going to see Abby. I'm going to see all the girls on the floor who are playing the game. When you and I mean, the pros is different. But when you and I go to FedEx Field, I love Josh Allen for buying the team, but I'm not going to see him.
Correct.
So if I'm seeing a bunch of kids walk around with a Lynn Bias jersey or a Michael Jordan jersey, and I'm dating myself here because I don't know a lot of these young college players right now, but if I see them wearing those jerseys, University of Maryland is still making money off Lynn Bias jerseys.
Correct.
The Bias family, under the rules when Lynn Bias played, could not benefit from that.
Correct.
I don't think that part's fair because boosters and hotels, we see it with Prime right now. Hotels are being sold out. Tolls are being paid on the highways. Restaurants are making money because these kids are playing ball.
Look at what happens to the economy when you have some of these, especially college football.
My sister went to Penn State last week.
Okay, so
she's not even a football fan.
There's a great example. And did she stay overnight?
Stayed overnight. Went Friday.
Okay.
Stayed Friday night and Saturday night.
How much did she pay for a hotel?
That much I don't know. But I know it was 110,000 people.
I can promise you this.
It was 300 a night.
On a low end.
Right?
On a low end.
Right.
Probably closer to 5 to 6.
Right. Plus the ticket, plus parking.
So everybody else benefits, but the kids. So I think there's a positives to NIL. I think there still needs to be more education about it to not just the kids, but to the families. So that people are doing it for the right again, business decision and doing it for the right reasons and not making that the number one. Kids shouldn't come in the transfer portal and their first question to the college coach is, what's your NIL deal?
Right.
Are you hooping or do you want money?
Because we've seen this happen.
Oh, it's happening.
Right, where a certain university has more money allocated to NIL than another, so then I'm going to go there because I can do more commercials there or I can sell more stuff there. Right? And are you going back to what you said, if we take that NIL deal away or that sport away, are you going to be happy going to, Idaho State or whatever,
Yeah.
where you're way away from your family, the money has run out because you tore your ACL, and now you're not just a 3-hour drive home, bro. You're in Idaho, where no one looks like you.
Right.
Okay. What does this mean for women's athletics, Steve? Because women's athletics has always taken a back seat to men's athletics in terms of the revenue, in terms of seats in the stands, in terms of what they bring to a college. You've got the Georgetown Hoyas playing at Capital One Arena, and my girls are still playing at McDonough.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what this means for women's athletics.
Well, as I've seen right now, the women are the ones who are really benefiting and gaining opportunity.
And shout out to Courtney Weish over at Maryland.
Through the NIL. And you're seeing some of the, especially the big names in the game, they're getting themselves opportunities to be set before they even get out of college.
Right.
And so I'm excited for them in that environment and in that space, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's helping them to a certain degree.
Right.
At the top of the food chain, I should say, level the playing field a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, their 1% are getting some unbelievable deals. Right. Some even better than the men.
Right. Love it for that. Love it for the sport. Love it for the women. Where do you expect this to go?
A couple of years, we won't even be talking about it.
Really?
It'll just be the norm.
Right. It'll just be the norm. But kids are still kids and families and parents.
I just think I would like to see us do a much better job, and I think it's going to have to start at the grassroots level. Just educating, so that they're doing things right. What I'm afraid of right now for these young men and women, jumping, taking all this money. Curtis, you post about it almost every week. Financial literacy.
Right.
And who's the ones so hyped that they're getting this money, they spending it, they doing all kinds of craziness with it, they're not investing it, and the next thing you know, Uncle Sam coming and they don't have the money to pay their taxes. And now you got young men and women starting off their lives in financial strife.
Because here's the thing. You might be great for an NIL deal, but you might not necessarily be a great hooper or a great gridiron guy, or a great field hockey woman or whatever, but they like your image. They like what you can bring to the product. And if you're not making $10 million a year in the sport, did you spend all that NIL money you made at 19?
Right. Well, I think that's where I think the women have an advantage of it is, I mean, you look at the twins, and I can't think of their names, but I've followed a little bit of what they've done. The two young ladies who played at Miami.
Right.
And now they're not playing anymore.
Right.
But they took advantage of NIL to now set themselves up with opportunities in a space that they were able to learn about in college, and now they're out there gaining opportunities and being able to partner with different businesses, and they're making this their business now versus having to continue to play the game to try to raise money or make money. Now they're getting it out in the space of through advertising and partnerships that they've built pre getting out of college.
Right, Haley and Hannah Cavender.
Yes. And now out of college, they're killing it.
Coach, that's just about our time right there. What did I not cover? I want to give you the space to talk about this because, to me, I mean, we're only 3 episodes into this season. This is more important than anything because there's so much lack of education when it comes to the transfer portal. Oh, I'll just reclass and blah blah blah, and you know, all of that is happening to our sport. And you and I love this sport so much. We don't want to see it broken down by 30-year-old 8th graders.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think the big thing is, I'll leave it at this. Parents, I think it's important before you make any decisions in any of these spaces that we spoke about today, reclassing, transfer portal, NIL, truly know what your end game is. And make sure that you're talking with people who have your child's best interests at heart before you go making decisions that could mess up their careers.
Other opportunities, right?
Correct.
Because what we do know is that most kids in the transfer portal are going to go pro in something other than that sport, right?
Very true.
Right?
Very true.
I mean, because, I've seen a lot of kids at Gonzaga, seen a lot of kids at DeMatha, seen a lot of kids at Oak Hill. They don't all become pro.
That's true.
And I see some 32-year-old guys who are chasing over in Europe some money, and then they come back, and I'm not saying they are doing bad at all, but they come back and they're coaching the local public high school.
Well, they're not sure of what they really wanted to do. So That's why I'm saying figure out what your end game is.
Right. Figure out what your end game. And, Coach, that's our time. We want to thank each of you for listening. Be sure to pass along the word about our podcast. And, of course, if you want to build your brand, come get at us, and we will put you on to our audience. We'd love to expose our listeners to brands who support Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner. Listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Amazon Music, TuneIn, radio, and more than 15 podcast platforms. But you all already know this because you're listening right now. Steve, what do you want to say to the people, my man?
Thanks for listening with us, and we look forward to being back with you next week.
Until next week, everyone. Coach, thanks for podcasting with me today. Or am I podcasting with you? You podcast with me.
Man, we podcast together.
Let's keep the energy behind this brand going. Until next time, everyone, we'll see you.
You're listening to Take a TO with Coach Steve Turner and your host, Kirk Cross.